Hello and welcome. My name is Angela Davis and I am the Forum Quilter. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you've been with me for a long time, here's another video. Please enjoy. This is all about straight line machine quilting and tips that I can give you along the way of how to make it easier to manipulate the quilt through your domestic sewing machine. I've also included two links in the description box. One to show you how I put together this quilt. It's called Trip Around the World. And the other link is another video about machine quilting, except that video was about meandering. This video is about tips for straight line quilting. Please enjoy. Tips for handling bulky quilts, okay? Now, this is my domestic sewing machine. This is my home sewing machine. It is, I think there's 7.5 inches between the needle and the edge of my machine here. That's called the harp. Some people call it the throat space. Whatever you call it, that's what I have. Now, it does get bulky, okay? See all that? That's curled up, okay? Okay, and it does get bulky over here, okay? But the thing to concentrate on is, as you're sewing a bulky quilt, I'm only interested in the space from the needle to here. That's about 3 inches. Okay, right here, when I stop and I'm repositioning and I'm getting ready, I want to make sure this area between my fingers and my thumb is smooth. If I have this over here and there's puckers here, I'm going to be sewing puckers into the quilt. So I want this to be flat and this to be flat. Don't worry about over here and don't worry about over there. What's right here? Okay, what's right here? Because of straight line sewing, and I'm not doing meandering, that is the focus, so that as I'm sewing, I'm going to go slow for you. Stop, just readjust. Now when you stop, put your needle down, and right here, this bulk that's in front of me, I'm fluffing it up like this. Because as I'm working, this is going to get dragged down and that's going to pull against the feed dog. So as you're stitching, lift up, stop and lift so that this is nice and fluffy and not dragging down the quilt. So let me continue. And I stitch about 1 inch. And then I fluff this up again, okay? If I didn't do that, as I'm sewing, this would get dragged down, which pulls against the opposite of the feed dog. So when I stop, I'm going to lift all this bulk up so that's nice and fluffy, okay? And then I'll stitch this next section. Readjust my hands. Okay, now, I don't spray baste. I've never used spray basting before. I've always used safety pins. That's my comfort level. So when I come to a safety pin, I'll stop, put the needle down, take my foot off my foot pedal, because if I lean or move my position, I'm moving my weight, I could accidentally engage the foot pedal, which would bring that needle up and down, and I could potentially, catch my finger in there. So that's not a good thing. So once I take out that pin, I can refluff and then position my hands and then start again. Okay, stop, reposition so that it's nice and flat. Smooth it out. stop, needle down, fluff it up. When I get to the end of my stitching row, I'm going to press the reverse button and just reverse 2 or 3 stitches. 2, 3, 4. Okay, lift up the presser foot, pull away, snip, snip, the back, and then I'm ready for my next row. The other thing that you want to consider when you're doing straight line quilting on a big quilt is I started at the opposite end and I sewed these 2 rows in this direction, but now I have to turn the quilt around so that I'm sewing back in this direction. And the reason why you want to alternate every couple rows like that is because if you continue to sew all in the same direction, you're going to get a little bit of pulling and dragging from your presser foot from the straight line quilting, which can cause puckers, okay? So every couple rows, you want to turn it around and sew in the opposite direction. When I start, I pull up the bobbin thread, take my foot off the foot pedal, and then grab that bobbin thread. Okay, pull it up. Okay. Take 1 or 2 stitches. Okay. The reason why you want to pull up the bobbin thread is that prevents any bird's nests. It prevents the thread from pulling, and sometimes you get those knots. I'm using a walking foot that's designed to work with my machine. Sometimes your machine will come with its own walking foot, and other times you need to purchase the walking foot that is designed for the make and model of your machine. The walking foot has feed dogs in it so that the top of the quilt doesn't drag against the feed dogs underneath. They move simultaneously to feed all 3 layers through. I'll leave a link down below in the description box that shows you how I put this quilt together, and I'll also leave a link down below that I demonstrate how to do meandering type quilting. Trim the threads as soon as you're done with that row, because it literally does save you time at the end, because if you wait at the end, I swear the threads multiply and it takes a lot longer to trim those threads. The other tip I have is how big is the table you're working on when you're machine quilting, because the bigger your space is on the back side of your machine, the easier it is to quilt, okay? Whereas if you have a narrow table that stops here and it's dragging on the outside, it's going to pull against your feed dog. So if you do have a narrow table, do you have a couple of TV trays that you can put on the other side? You have a card table you can put on the other side that you can take down or put up when you're doing your machine quilting to alleviate that stress on the other side as you're feeding the quilt through. I don't know what happened, but I need to take out that entire last row of stitching. That's my last tip for you when machine quilting. After you do 1 or 2 rows, turn it over and look at the back and make sure that you didn't run into any issues with your bottom thread. And that's what happened here. See, these 2 rows are fine. This one I'm going to have to take out and redo. The other tip that I have is when you're prepping to stitch your next row, rolling your quilt as tight as you can helps eliminate that bulk in your sewing space. Always have a comfortable chair. Okay, so pulled up my bobbin thread, and that reduces the likelihood of getting a knot on the back of your quilt. You know, they're birds' nests. So to sum up, if you don't have time to send a quilt out to the long armor, or you need a gift quickly, straight line quilting on a larger quilt can be done. It just requires a little more patience and a little more adjusting as you go. And remember, just go slow. And yes, I did have to take out a whole row of stitching earlier because I was having issues with my top thread. So in that situation, I took the top thread out, the bobbin thread out, I dusted and cleaned my machine, changed the needle, and then rethreaded it. And since then, I've had no issues. You know, sometimes it happens. So I did have to take out that whole row of stitching, but that was because of my machine, not because, you know, I had any oopses on my quilt. Also, the other thing is, keep in mind when you're making a quilt and you're doing the machine quilting yourself. I used to get really hung up on if there was a little pucker here or there. And then I realized something. Nobody notices it. Now, if it's a really big pucker where I think, okay, that's noticeable, I will take the time and take it out and restitch that row. And in those situations, it's usually because I didn't put enough pins in that area to keep everything flat and smooth so there's no shifting. So it's usually, you know, on me. So just keep those tips in mind the next time you decide to do a larger quilt on your domestic machine. Just be patient and have fun with it. And remember, it's all about the process and enjoying yourself. So if you're new to my channel, be sure to hit that like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my next videos. And if you've been with my channel since the beginning, thank you so much. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. And remember, why sleep when you can sew? I'm Angela Davis, and I'm the 4 AM Quilter. Bye now.